Okay, let me clarify that a little bit. The telemetry that we got this morning, we're still looking at to understand exactly which of the potential fixes that we implemented actually was what allowed us to open up that communications channel with the lander. And so we're still really a little uncertain as to what in fact was what ultimately gave us the ability to communicate again with the lander successfully. But right now we're at about an 80% success rate. A couple of possibilities. One of which is that the modem or the hardware that the computer uses to interface with the modem, either on the lander side or on the rover side, these actually are identical on both sides of the interface. There's a possibility that a piece of that hardware hung, something like your computer would hang when you're working on it, and that the shutdown of the rover overnight, which is a normal thing for us to do, would have cleared that up. That's one possibility. We also switched the power supply on the lander side to the modem. We have essentially one modem on the lander, and we have two power supplies. So we switched the power supply to that modem. That may also have been what cleared up the communication degradation. And there are one or two other, perhaps less likely possibilities. But we're going to need to take some time to look at our data and at the lander's data to really know for sure.
Okay, William?
Yes, William Boyer for Space News. So is it at this point you really don't know what caused the problem, so you don't really know if it's going to happen again in the future? And then is this fail-safe mode for the rover, is the clock still running on that and it's potentially going to start doing its own thing? You talked last night about how it would go and just deploy itself automatically.
Yeah, that's right. Well, until we understand which fix it was that actually corrected the degradation in the communication link, we're not going to know for sure what the cause was. But clearly, if it was correctable once, we feel like there's very high probability we could correct it again. And relative to the contingency sequence, since we have now received a new sequence on board the rover, the one which we uplinked just before this lander downlink, that to some degree has reset that counter. However, it's always hovering there in the background. In the event that something happens down the line on the rover, it will actually implement and carry on with the rover mission.
Yeah, Paul Wolferston, USA Today. Richard, in between sunrise and sunset, Earthrise and Earthset, and all these times, how many hours a day, Earth hours, does it work out that you're actually in two-way communication with the lander?
That we're getting, the times at which the spacecraft is transmitting data to us is relatively short every day, between 2 and 3 hours. We are usually transmitting to the spacecraft all the time between Earthrise and Earthset, or at least as much time as we have DSN station coverage, which sometimes isn't continuous. But for the first couple days, it's been continuous from Earthrise to Earthset. That's about 12 hours.
Key?
Key Davidson, San Francisco Examiner. This morning there was some discussion by Paul Smith about an interesting looking object quite a ways in the distance that some people have compared to a couch or an old seat cushion or whatever. Assuming that all goes well with the rover, is the rover capable of traveling whatever distance it is to that object and getting a better look at it?
Well, with the other issues that we've been dealing with actually over the last day or two, we haven't had a lot of time to view the scenery, so to speak.
Yeah.
We're going to start doing that sort of thing now, obviously, and looking at potential rover targets and operations areas. And for the first couple days, we'll really just have a learner's permit relative to driving the rover. It'll take us a couple days to get our sea legs, and then we'll start to venture out a little farther away from the lander. How far we go really depends on how long the rover mission lasts, I think.
But isn't it true, we're talking about tens of meters, most likely, how far the rover gets away.
Okay, one back here.
Yeah, I'd like to ask the three of you to maybe look back upon the the most concerned moment you had in the last 12 hours. What were your fears when there wasn't this direct link with Sojourner? How nervous were you, and what was the mood at Mission Control?
I think the mood has always been optimistic. I mean, particularly after yesterday when we had so many things go right. I mean, it was like, you know, we need to persevere here and things will take care of themselves. It's been, you know, I've mentioned many times over the last few days that this is somewhat of a ride, a wild ride for the flight team. And I mean, there is a lot of stuff that's happening, and it's pretty dynamic, and actually it's really fun. I mean, this is really what we're here for. I suspect that when we get the Rover off, that things will settle kind of down and be a little less dramatic, and in a sense we'll miss these first few days. So you know, we're all up there having fun. I don't think anybody is really down in the dumps or depressed or anything.
You know what I sense hanging around up there is no one thought anything broke, and everybody was confident that we're going to fix it, and so we weren't really that down. As a matter of fact, we were very up.
Irene?
Irene Brown, Discovery Channel Online. Once the Rover mission begins, is it in constant communication with the lander, or is it data taped and then relayed at specific intervals? And then, just one other question about the Rover mission for tonight. Once it's off the ramp, exactly what do you propose to do with it tonight?
Okay, your first question. The rover typically will attempt to communicate with the lander during daylight hours on Mars, about once a minute. So it's very frequent communications. It goes and looks for new instructions, essentially, about once a minute. At nighttime, however, to conserve power, we typically will command the rover to shut down and to hibernate, sleep, and wake up typically once an hour to do just sort of a check with the lander to tell the lander that we're still here and we're still okay. Relative to what we're going to do this afternoon and tonight, most likely if we get to the point where we have a successful ramp deployment and egress, we'll just drive down the ramp. We may do a small turn, but very little other than that. And then we'll drop our spectrometer, which is on the rear side of the rover, down onto the soil and start to take some overnight measurements of the soil.
Joe?
Joe Palca from National Public Radio. Have you made any plans yet of when you'll deploy the IMP mast?
Right now, the plan is to do it late this afternoon, Mars time, late this evening here. That'll be actually after Rover deploy. It'll be around 11 o'clock tonight. So we won't actually get images back from the deployed position until tomorrow. At the earliest.
Todd?
Todd Halverson of Florida Today. I think you guys were going to take the insurance panorama with the IMP today, and I was wondering when that panorama would be coming down, if it is in fact coming down.
Actually, the plan is to take those images right before we deploy the camera, and so it'll occur fairly late this evening. Those images, because they're quote insurance pans, aren't really high priority once we deploy the camera on its mast. And so what really will happen if we follow the normal plan that we have is tomorrow we would acquire some more interesting stereo imaging, which would in fact jump in front of that in the queue. The only reason why we may begin to get some of that is that in fact we're able to support much higher data rates than we were using in planning. Right now we're at about 4740 bits per second, which we probably can turn that up a little bit as well and go up to the next, at least probably the next higher data rate than that. So in fact we may end up getting some of that insurance data back as soon as tomorrow. So.
All right, well, that has been a briefing here by the NASA engineering team of the Mars Pathfinder program. And basically what they're telling us is they're taking their time. They're not going to rush things. In the next couple of hours, we should know if we have ramp deploy. And then about 3 hours after that, we should know if they were able to get the rover off of the ramp. That will probably be the extent of the activities today, but things are certainly looking up. Donna Shirley.
Yes, they are.
They are looking very good. A very good chance then tonight. The rover's off the ramp. What are they doing right now? Why are they being so cautious?
Well, they're being cautious because we don't understand what happened last night. And so rather than rush into anything, they want to be sure that they understand the condition of the rover. They want to understand as much as they can why whatever happened last night happened. And they want to make sure that what they're going to do is the right thing to do. So they're diagnosing the data from last night, you know, sort of poring over it to try to understand what it means. They're also busily planning what to do next. And there's several options that they have. For instance, they know that the alpha proton X-ray spectrometer has already been released, that apparently some of the rover release has taken place because they've got data that shows that. And so, but the ramps are still rolled up. So now they're trying to decide, do they unroll the ramps first? Do they unroll just the front ramp or just the back ramp or both? Do they stand up before they unroll the ramps, or do they unroll the ramps first? So they're trying to make decisions like that that are going to maximize the chances of a successful rover deployment.
And you've got to get the rover to stand up before it goes anywhere, correct?
Right, absolutely. It has to stand up, and it's right down like this, and these are the rocker bogies, let's say, which are the levers that hold the wheels. And what happens when it stands up is there's a wheel here and a wheel here, and it drives those wheels together so that this flexes up and then click, latches into place. And that's what they want to make sure happens. So they want to make sure they understand the configuration of the rover exactly before they do that drive up.
Now, there's been a lot of talk that the rover might only last a week on the surface of Mars.
Right.
The mission was scheduled for a week. But this delay doesn't mean in 5 or 6 days now the rover's going to stop working.
No, the week was chosen for mission design purposes. We had to pick something. So we said, okay, let's try, just to make sure that we can get what we need to get done before anything could possibly happen to the rover. Let's say a week. What can we get done in a week? So that drove us to want to get the rover off very quickly. Now later we discovered that the lander wanted to get rid of the rover just as bad as the rover wanted to get off the lander, because the rover's sitting on their solar panels, blocking some of the solar energy. So after a few days, if the rover doesn't get off, it may compromise the lander mission because it would be able to transmit less.
All right, Donna Shirley, thank you very much again for taking time in a very, very busy schedule to come here and join us. And Donna would also tell you that the rover has instructions to take off on its own if it doesn't get some commands after a predetermined amount of time. So they do want to get this taken care of and move on now and get the rover off so that the geologists can get out there and start getting all that great data from what they say is just a tremendous site that far outshines anything in the Viking lander sites from some 21 years ago. So from here at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, this is John Zarella reporting live.
Big sigh of relief. John, thanks very much. And